Hello and welcome to this 1-hour webinar about the 5 key new features coming in 2023 release wave 2 in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance. I just added in Microsoft if you were in doubt, but this is Dynamics 365 and Finance. This is Finn out of Copenhagen, where the time is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Welcome to this webinar. I'm with my colleagues, Henny and Alison from AXcademy, and they'll take care of the chat, and any questions coming up, please drop them in the chat and we'll pick up on those later on. Welcome and thank you for joining. So what's on the menu for today? I had sort of a webinar promise in the invitation for this, and that was once again about release wave 2, which came out, I think, late July. And some of the things I'd like to mention is about the enhancements to the bank module functionality. Not enough, if you're asking me, but it's always something. Financial tax, once again, I presented those at the last webinar, which we did in, I think, February. You can find it under our recorded webinars on AXcademy. Important addition, definitely. And there's some new things about the business performance analytics and a similar thing about the extended planning and so on. I'll do those ones in kind of one go. Then we've got some new things about invoice capture and AP automation. Maybe some of you saw this already in the invitation, as well as a quick recap of the release wave 1, what was in there. And should you have any questions about what I present today about release wave number 2 for finance, that is, please drop me a note in the chat and I'll pick it up at the end of this session. And also at the end of this session, I know Alison is bringing around an exclusive offer for people watching live today. And live today only, not in a recorded session. It's going to be later in this webinar. So what's it going to be from Microsoft's side? The updates to Microsoft Dynamics 365 includes a lot of things. And just to set the scene, this could be, it's not going to be all of it, it could be around finance, core finance, where there are 18 features if you study the details in the release wave. We've also got the Globalization Studio, which is sort of an endless story, I guess, because when governments, authorities, and other things requires Microsoft to add things around the world, where currently I think Dynamics is running 200 countries, there needs to be a lot of things. And also this time around, even for my own very small country, Denmark, there is very unusual. There is actually a new feature coming up in here. 12 this time around. And I'm not going to do too many of those ones because it's then for one country like my own one or some other countries. But there are a couple of things in there I'd like to mention because they are in a global perspective, really exciting things, I think, at least. And also then we got the Copilot, which at least Microsoft thinks is a very exciting thing. I'm not sure yet, but I know it's coming. And it's coming fast. It's coming this time around also for Dynamics 365. And then soon it's going to be rolled out with the whole Microsoft 365 thing, not in Europe the first time around, but soon it's coming around in the States and other places too. It really looks exciting. Not so much in Dynamics 365, or rather in Dynamics 365 co-working with some of the other tools that we have, Teams and so on. It looks promising, really. Let's see what happens. And then, of course, we've got some cross-app functionality inside F&O and also outside F&O. We have changes in supply chain management, which is related to finance. I did some of those 3 weeks ago, I think, when I did a webinar about supply chain management. And then, of course, the usual platform updates and more. I have to focus. So I'll focus on the core financial things, a little bit in the Globalization Studio, and the rest, I would think I'm not going to have time to do. So for the core financials, what I noted in here, well, overall, I thought the first time I saw the release wave, I was not overly excited, I have to say. Where are all the big things? But you know, a lot of times we're not asking about the big things. We're asking about the smaller things that we like Microsoft to improve. And we have a lot of those this time around, really time savers. Also, some of the ones that the first time when I had a look, I didn't think much of it. But then when I discussed with some of my colleagues and I came to think about some of my project notes, I brought it up front. This is one of them. coming up now, the net customer and vendor balance. Now, please remember, when we have new tools being added, it's not necessarily something that you would use, or you could use, or you would be allowed to use allowed from either a legal perspective or from the standard business procedures that you do in your countries. So this feature might not be something they would use in my country, in some other countries, and then you have to say kind of please anyway. So what this is about, the net custom and vendor balance. This is a possibility if you have the same entity as a customer and a vendor. So you would only send, if it was like you owe money to the vendor and the vendor owes you a little bit of money being a customer, you'll only send the difference. I had a lot of questions about that over the years, and there was some ways of doing it, but not always nice and easy. So the value of this would be that you save all the transactional cost, both the internal ones and the, of course, minor fees that you have to pay to the bank to take care of the transfer of that. So we do only transfer the net amount into our accounts or out to the vendor's account by calculating what is the difference on the balances in here. So balancing the netting in for a vendor or a customer, that is the same party. And then some of you might think about the global address book. We're going to use the global address book for this. No, it doesn't look like that. And I'm not quite sure why. I know some people do not use the global address book for linking up entities. It does sound like fun, right? Party and all that. But in reality, not everybody does the thing when you find creating a new customer, you will have to search through the global address book, and you'll find that this one already exists somewhere over there on the vendor's side. You don't do the link. I know a lot of people who don't do that, a lot of projects where we don't do that. So I guess Microsoft is taking into account that the global address book is perhaps not in widespread use, not as widespread use, that would say this is the one that you use for this. So if it's going to be used like that, it could have been a constraint. So as I see it, as it is right now, this is basically you select the account numbers, as we know, the vendor account, the customer account number, and then you link them up. Got a screenshot showing that. So basically the benefit of this is to make it easier just to send the money required, the difference between I owe you, you owe me, and send that money, saving you on not having double transactions, not transferring money out and back, and the bank making more money than absolutely necessary on your transactions. So even though the first time around I ignored that, I didn't even have it in my presentation here when I discussed with my colleagues, and then I had a look into my project notes. I thought, we've been asked about this so many times. So what would you need to do? You need to configure, obviously, and not discussing today about what is the difference between setup and configuration. We do that all the time. But anyway, configure. You have to do some periodic tasks, and then you would need to be able to ask what really happened in here. I'm not sure I understand that. So these are the three parts, I think, of this functionality. Configuration basically is linking the accounts and so on. So setting up things, are you allowed to do that, and making the agreements and so on. And then once you've set it up, you can either decide to do this netting automatically or manually. Of course, if you do it automatically based on the links and based on whatever you set up with the date ranges and so on, everything is fine. If you want to do it manually, you would, I guess, have some kind of manual process, getting an overview, and then ask the system to do that. So you would have periodically have a look at what does it look like, run a query, get some proposals, and say, let's go. I would think you'd set it up to be done automatically. If you're asking the vendor, shouldn't we really do like that? The customer, shouldn't we do that same thing? Let's do it. Saving money for both parties, well, customer and vendor in here, since it doesn't really look like we're going to use the global address book in here. And then once things have happened, depending on if you've done them automatically or manually, they've happened, you want to know what was it, then have a look at what's been happening in here with the relations and the actual transactions of what happened with the vendor and the customer invoices. So not being huge, I just think this is useful in the everyday life of trying to save money on that. The bank module The standard bank module is quite often one where I have some discussions with Microsoft customers and other parties too. Why can't we do like this? I think it's not without reason, just between you and me. I think it's not without reason that some of the most popular add-on modules, third-party modules, if not the most popular ones, are bank modules to Dynamics 365. I admit that a lot of improvements has happened, and also this time around, but still, I'm looking for something more. But let's see what it is this time around with the standard Dynamics 365 bank module. So actually, a few things, and absolutely good things if you're using the standard bank module, that is. So you can now set up, finally, I would say, to import bank statements automatically. We've got customers who've got hundreds, thousands of bank accounts, and until now, it was a manual thing to do the import of the bank statement. And why would you do that? Well, for the automatic settlement or manual settlement of bank accounts. And with that, we need some improvements too. Unfortunately, this time around, it came more complex bank reconciliation matching rules. There's a lot of places in Dynamics 365 Finance where the system can help you do like one-to-one matching. But a lot of times also with bank account transactions, we don't have one-to-one. We have one-to-many, many-to-one, or many-to-many, which is even worse. And also this, you couldn't do that automatically. Now you got more complex bank reconciliation rules, and I'll show you a bit more details about that later on. I'm really excited about that. I am not so much excited about the next things. I admit it's improvements, but I'm not going through all the details of this, just mentioning what is in the release wave. And then, of course, you could study for yourself some of the other things in here. So I'll just go through the details of a couple of these ones, the top ones in here, which I find most exciting of all of these. And then we'll get down to the bottom. Credit transfer format is for some countries, I would think only. And the last one is if you're using checks only. It's still in use in a lot of countries, but not in all. So I said, okay, let's have a look at the first two of these ones, which are, if you're using the standard Dynamics 365 bank module, I really think they are great. So import the bank statements automatically, basically, as I mentioned, would give you the value of, instead of me going through all these bank statements each and every month or however often I want to do that, it can now be done, saving a lot of time on my accounting time. And then, of course, we'll do the next thing. We'll do the settlement then, automatic settlement set up on each of the bank accounts, and then have all those various now complex, or more complex at least, reconciliation matching rules by one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, and other things too. One-to-one we had, and now we have one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many. This, I think, is really good. So, end of advertising, just mentioning a little bit of what it is that we have in here. So as mentioned, now having more advanced or complex, if you prefer, rules in here. So a lot of the things which we had to do manually now can be solved by these rules in here. That takes off a lot of work with this. One, the import the bank statements automatically, and two, now be able to reconcile even more sophisticated, or if you want in the buzz of Microsoft, the complex transactions in here. Everyday use in here. I really think that's good. Right. So let me just move on. I'm not going to do more about the things that happened with the bank, but please note that there were more things mentioned in there, but some things I really miss is still not in there, like using posting profiles. Why don't we get that? Sorry, that's one of my usual dead horses kind of thing. We got posting profiles integration kind of things from so many subledger entries and going on, but not in the bank accounts. Financial tax, that's really great. Just revisiting this in here because there's some new functionality. As Microsoft has promised, this is going to trickle onto a lot of the various other transactions that we could do. We had the things about the last time I did a webinar about finance in February, I think. I did a lot of things about financial tax because I'm really excited. I've done a blog post about it too because I'm really excited about that. Because financial dimensions, they're great, right? They're great for reporting and other things too. But when you configure those, and then when you change your mind and you want to do different things, if you want to edit transactions, you want to change dimension values, you can't. You shouldn't be able to. But some of the things we do with the values that we give, transactional documents and other things that comes around from, I don't know, shipping and other things too. You might want to add on our own, not predefine the values, but just add them and later on be able to edit those. But when we do, as the new thing is in here, when we do some accounting distribution, we want to do that too. Ledger settlements and things. So I'm really strong in favor of the financial tags. I can see them not replacing financial dimensions, but sometimes taking a lot of the financial dimensions away, because now we could solve it differently and much better for the daily user and also for the reporting users as well. I really think this is good. It's not completely done yet, but this time around, there's some more being added in here about the financial tags. So now this can be added to accounting distribution like we do it on invoices, free text invoices, and so on. So now I can add those instead of just having, well, but having the things about doing accounting distribution across main accounts, financial dimensions with a percentage of fixed amounts or whatever. Now I can also do it on financial tags in here. And deservedly so, because if I really want to replace the things about financial manuals, the financial dimensions with these values in here, it has to be sort of everywhere. And now it's getting to the accounting distribution. It's not done yet, but this is adding yet more places to use the financial tags. So on every project, it's decision time. I think, are we ready? Is Dynamics 365 ready to use the financial tags in here instead of all those financial dimensions that we always struggle with to keep at sort of a fairly low number, whatever a fairly low number is, but trying to reduce the number of the financial dimensions in here where we can use financial tags. Microsoft is making it easier and easier, but it's always a decision on each of the projects if we're ready to use these ones instead of financial dimensions. Anyway, that was financial tags, one of my favorite things, favorite new things that's been happening, favorite new features on that has been happening in here. Okay, just got a warning on my screen about an unstable connection. I hope that is not mine, but because I want to stay here for another good 45 minutes for sure. So moving on to show you just a little bit more about the financial dimensions in here. It mentions that you can now use the financial tags also, of course, being created before when we could use them in journals pretty much only. And now you can select those ones now already on the accounting distribution. This is what it looks like. This is from Microsoft documentation. This is from a free text invoice. Maybe some of you would be familiar with the screen. Where we could do the distribution, like we've got a free text invoice line and we want to have that single line on the invoice to the customer. However, internally, we want to redistribute the revenue, which we're talking about here. We want to redistribute the revenue onto to what? Well, financial dimensions, or want to put tags on it? That's the question in here, because now you can have the tags. So depending on what the purpose is for splitting or distribute the amount on the free text invoice line, then you could go with the financial dimensions as always, or you could think about if the tag would do you well. And please remember that the tags can be modified, the tag values can be modified even after posting. You can't do that with the financial dimensions. And that is good, depending, of course. Now moving on to more, there's some more details in there, and it won't stop moving for a while. Microsoft will still add things, and you can see that at the bottom of this slide in here, that in future releases, and as always, in this release wave, there are new things which are not completely finished yet. And that's the way it's moving forwards. And also for the financial tags in here, you can get some, in the future, some default values and so on. And that's great. What do you use the financial tags for? Well, we use them for analysis. Analysis is great, but it needs to serve a purpose. And I think this time around, we're moving closer to not just doing financial data or any other kind of data for the data perspective, it's moving closer to actually being useful. I'm not saying that we don't do useful reports, but I'm just saying that the more use we can make of the data, the better it actually is. And this is where these new tools, where the business performance analytics comes around. Could use tags, of course, could use financial dimensions and the other things that we have. I think some of the new tools that we will see in this release wave and in future release waves, that is due to the fact that now we are having a couple of platforms being separate that is being with more and more customers. We got the Dynamics 365 apps, usual 5 suspects, and then we got the other side. We got the customer engagement, we got sales, we got the first 2 scenarios of project operations on that, and we don't share the same platform. So we need to be able to do dual right. We're able to do that right now, but also when we're talking about analytics, we're talking about reports, we need to be able to do seamless reporting on data from either side of that. And that's where Microsoft is getting at, and that is where I'm getting at too. So some of these tools, not necessarily just this one, but some of these tools, I think, is moving towards being able to handle data from, doesn't matter if you get it from Dynamics 365 Finance Operations, or you get it from Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement, or Sales, or Project Operations, Scenario 1 and 2, and all that. So some of these new tools in here about the analytics would enable you to actually make something out of things in there. You can see Dataverse being mentioned in here. Some of you would know Dataverse when you are doing the dual rights and other things in here as well. All right. So a lot of things in here, questions coming in the chat as well. That's good. I'll pick those up when we get closer to the end, if I can answer, and I'll tell you if I can't answer too on that. So right now with this business performance analytics, the first introduction in here. So you get financial, non-financial data across also from the Dataverse, and then you can get some tables so you can see things from multiple systems. And I think that multiple systems is right now, at least, Dynamics 365, wherever you are, if that is in finance operations or if that is in customer engagement and other things too. And that is the trouble with the standard tools quite often, isn't it? That we got some well-defined data entities and things in Dynamics 365 Finance Operations, but as soon as you want to make some relations to things that are in sales or in customer engagement and other things too, it's tough. And then now moving towards some of the things where we could do reports across the board. That's good, really. And there's more about that later on. And that is, I can't remember where I got that quote from, turn data into action to improve business performance. Probably a Microsoft thing, but I really think that's kind of spot on. I don't really care about data in itself. It needs to help me to take some action. So my business is making more money, making customers more happy, employees more happy, hopefully as well. So you make it useful. And in order to make it useful, you need to make it easy. And there's more about that later on. Make it easy to do the reporting. So a couple of screenshots in here about the things to come, that now we have a data model where you can get the data across the board in here. And you don't necessarily have to use developers for that. Of course, they're going to be better if you use a developer, but you can't wait for that. So you want to do it right now and then create some of these ones, hard to read ones. But these are some of the reports that you could do with Excel spreadsheets and with Power BI, and then get the data in from, well, the finance operations or whatever you're going to source the data. So you need to have some place to have, to have these reports in here so people can access those. And some things I really like is the idea of this being similar to Power BI in itself, similar to reports in good old Management Reporter, now Financial Reporter, that once you have created the report, you can refresh it basically on the spot on that. And that's some of the things we're going to have. And then we need to be a little bit careful about that, who can access this. But first things first. So you can have a reporting hub where you got the things in there and you got the pre-configuration, central repository, SharePoint, or whatever it's going to be. Then you can have these reports sort of ready-made. You just have to push a button, then it's updated to the last things. That's like salespeople, they want to get an overview of what the sales is like. You have configured everything. Even doing some queries or asking about things, doing drop downs, that could be a challenge. So why not just a button that automatically updates the things in here, which we see in some places, and now also for these reports, which are across multiple data sources in here. So create, well, and find relevant reports in here, and hopefully then you don't have to do a thing, or you don't have to do a thing apart from pushing a button. Of course, if you're allowed to use that, we need to have security, and you need to think about A, access to the report, B, access to the overall data entities or tables, records, whatever. And then on the record level and on the field level too, we need to make sure that security is tight. So you could do kind of the same report, but as usual, we will have something about security, role level security, and other things too, to ensure that same report will not show the same things depending on who actually access these reports in here. Right. That was about the some of the things about the business performance analytics in here that has been added or will be added soon, since it's in the release wave. And I have to say that I think Microsoft delivers as promised in the release waves by and large. Sometimes, of course, if it's a fairly new thing which is going to happen in, say, March, then of course things could happen before that. But I'm positively surprised by how many things Microsoft actually delivers as promised. And that could be a reason for adding first step, next step, and so on, because they want to deliver and they're also cautious about the things. So more times than not, I'm positively surprised by actually the things being delivered in there. Maybe you got a different experience. Please share that in the chat. If so, then we could have a discussion about that. But please, around finance and release waves, and preferably about this one. Now, a part where I have to mention just a couple of things, and I have to bring up a small disclaimer when we get to that. But first things first, enhancements to invoice capture and AP automation. I'm all into automation. I'm kind of lazy, so I want the system to work for me or for me as well, and do it fast and precise and you know, all that. Now, Microsoft has added things. Microsoft has started adding things about invoice capture, as you would know, and is still working on that and improving on that. That's part of this story, and doing more things about AP automation. AP automation could be a lot of things, depending on if you're asking some of the third-party suppliers who are doing AP automation plugins on that, but basically making it faster to do things. We got the things like 2 or 3 or matching with automatic of approval of the purchase order invoices if we receive the goods, if the prices are in tolerances, and all that. That's a long-standing favorite of mine. But there are other things too, which we need to be aware of. That sometimes that things can't be done, doesn't match, and other things too. So Microsoft has added a new workspace, and if you've ever met me around Dynamics 365 and training on projects, you know, I'm all in favor of the workspaces. Not all consultants are. I want to navigate to the typical menu and navigate to a module, and that's all fine, because we do that as consultants. We have to configure, we have to set up things, and normally we can't do that from a workspace. But from the end user's daily life, I really like workspaces, which is so much focused on what you need to do, all in one place. And this new workspace is the same thing. I would like to bring to your attention, dear AP clerk, that we got some invoices that couldn't be approved automatically. You don't have to get a message or an alert or have to look for yourself in a journal. It's in your face. And when it's this kind of things, it's in a nice way, I think. So let's just have a look at that a little bit later on. Integration with custom pre-built model in invoice capture. Basically, this is Microsoft now adding more flexible functionality to the invoice capture. Even Microsoft, they start somewhere, and that's the same thing with the invoice capture. And before I get further down that road, we get to the disclaimer soon. And then handle periodically recurring invoices. I was not quite sure it was going to bring this one into my slide. And I'm still not sure. but maybe you could tell me what you think when I tell you more about this. The new workspace in here, and as mentioned, I'm all in favor of workspaces, right? Workspace, it tells you how many invoices need to go through, that my colleagues have been more busy than me, or whatever you'd like to do. So kind of like the exception center for invoices, not just being completely finalized, not being accounted for, not being approved, not being matched, or whatever it was. I just like the idea of the workspace. It's in here, and I could just do a few clicks. I get the overview. I get some business intelligence graphics or whatever. I'm all in favor. I mentioned that already. Sorry. So the business value of this in here is to further improve of the whole experience. I would think it doesn't in itself add to the automation, but it gives you a better overview of this. And then some other tools already existing does the automation. So the workspace in itself is just an overview. Not that I think there's much just about overviews or workspaces in it. It's great. That's being added, so I don't have to navigate to this, to that, or wait, or forget, or whatever. That's what I like about workspaces. I navigate to this, bypass the dashboard. I get straight into my workspace, and I get to work. And then I can see if I need to act immediately. So in itself, I think this doesn't add to the invoice automation as such. It just adds to the benefit of the AP clerk who handles the vendor invoices to see where there's something in a journal or something in the invoice pool or whatever it would be that you need to take care of. So I'm all in favor of workspaces. Bring them on, please. And this one too. So what do you have on the invoice in here? You can read for yourself on that, but doing the routine work, and that's what the daily users, they do a lot of the same things. And that's why I think workspaces are really great in here. And please note then the thing about the different features will be added piece by piece. It's just like with the financial tax. It's just with the invoice capture coming up and so on. There'll be more functionality added. It's a good sign. Moving down that, more workspace and helping the busy AP invoice clerks over here. Exceptions, always taking up the time. If you can find them through a workspace, what's not to like? Now, talking about the invoice capture and things, just a disclaimer, I'm biased when we're talking about the things in here because we provide training for SunUp, who provides the Xflow AP automation solution. But still, I'd like to tell you what Microsoft is up to. So until now, you would have the pre-built model in here with which fields to identify, how to scan and other things too. But obviously, Microsoft is improving. This is a fairly new tool. We need to do something because the other guys, Xflow, SKU, whoever does the third-party plugins, they can do more. So slowly but steadily, Microsoft is adding things in here. So now we can do custom recognizing models. So this field and adding custom fields and other things too. So we don't, as until now, have to settle with the one that Microsoft has done. Touchless automation, other things to go through, approval, routing, and so on. There's so many fancy things in this. And this is one of the places where I think on projects, we save a lot of time for our customers when we configure these things. And there's so much into the procurement, automation of AP processes and so on. This is low-hanging fruits. And I guess that's why Microsoft is entering this as well. They want to have this, and they're adding to the functionality in here. And it looks good. I have to say, it looks good. There's still a lot of things in here which is going to be added later on, but this is getting better for sure. This was one, periodically recurring invoices. Recurring invoices we have in other places, but this is in AP. So I just wanted to add to Microsoft text in here. This is AP. Now we don't generate invoices in AP. So what is this about? I had to think a little bit about the business value in here. It's not my business value, this is Microsoft, but I have to think a little bit about it. But then I came to the electricity prepayment. I thought, okay, I could see that, because normally when you have invoices, you get the invoices from the supplier. And of course, the amounts could vary and other things too, based on meters and subscriptions and other things too. But it could be things where you want to generate payments to your suppliers even before you get the yearly bill or whatever it is. So you do some account payments, and this could actually, I think, be nice for this in here. If it eliminates a large functional gap, I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's what the text says in the business value in this feature, so why not? But to me, yeah, it's useful. It's once again towards making life easier. I can see I've got a subscription, and I will not get a bill until later on, or do a prepayment or whatever it would be. So let's just automatically get some payment proposals through our normal payment journal in here, which could even be automated, which I don't know anybody who does that, but it could run automatically all of that. And now with this tool as well. So I decided to include it. Maybe you can see even more business value in this than I can. So nice, but large functional gap. I'm not sure. Maybe you think so. That's fine. Now, a couple of things about the Globalization Studio. Globalization Studio to enable Microsoft and us, all of us, to make this run across, well, the world, or at least 200 countries, as Microsoft says, as it is right now. There's so many things in there. I can't remember if it was 12 or 15 or whatever it was, but a lot of things this time around. And as always, when I have a look at this, I think, okay, this isn't a country where I'm working, and so on, because a lot of the things are to solve things in Latin America, to cater for some changes in Poland, or even this time around, some changes in my small kingdom of Denmark in here. I'm not going through that, not even the Danish one, but I want to show you some of the things which has a global impact and showing that Microsoft actually cares about customers. Yeah. I'm not surprised by that. That's not what I mean, but that actually there's things in here which is saying, okay, we're not perfect. We're Microsoft, but we're not perfect. We want to make things being open. We had something about that when at the webinar about supply chain management, where we open the supply chain for external system much more than we used to do. I was just doing some training this week and talked about the product information management, which is finally becoming global. But a lot of our customers, they don't use the product information management in Dynamics 365. And the same thing with the feature coming up soon about taxes, VAT, GST, Moms, Mehrwertsteuer, whatever it's called in the various countries, that I think the functionality in Dynamics 365 is really good. It's not perfect, and you have to maintain it. And maybe the last thing is the tricky thing. When you run a web shop, quite often you rely on external services to set up how you calculate on when it's like us on-demand courses, or if it's physical goods or whatever it would be, and it changes all the time. In Europe, outside of Europe, Brexit, and in the US, and other things happening all the time. It's hard work to keep up with what happens around the world. And Microsoft has now opened the, not the world, but the things about calculating sales tax, Moms, VAT, and all that, so you can connect to external services. I'm really excited about that. I think this is great, because why would you need to? Why do you have to maintain all of that, all the knowledge that you have to bring into this? Why not leave it to the guys who are better at this? So you can connect to a global service partner who provides all the things about the sales tax, the Moms, the Mehrwertsteuer around the world. So you could just basically relax. Implementing Dynamics 365 in the US, of course, you got your golden disk, so to speak, your already pre-configured company, but you have to maintain the rates, and then things change. You got a presidential election. No, don't know what happens. So all in favor of making it possible to link to some external services. So I'm not going to do all the various things that we're doing here. This was just a few lines popping in here very quickly, because it's not hot air, but it's just marketing buzz, I think. So I'd rather like to show you a couple of the things that I really think is nice. But I like the approach. I like Globalization Studio in the way they provide you the sort of possible switch on, switch off, and then basically it just works without any developer guys and so on. Yeah? Out of the box this time around, Latin America as mentioned, and then things about tax automation in here. That tax automation to me is the thing. So out of those globalization things, I have brought this one up first and foremost because I really think this is great. So this is the only thing I'm going to mention in the thing about the Globalization Studio. There are other things. If you're in Denmark, read the release notes. There's something about Danish things. If you're in Latin America, if you are, as always, read the notes pertaining to the countries where you operate. So what is it then, Finn? Well, this is a possibility. I don't care about all the things about Dynamics 365 tax module. Well, not the things about the sales tax codes, not the things about if you're going to do anything about unit-based or whatever we do when we set up this. Just leave it in the hands of some external service providers. So the possibility will now be that instead of having to struggle with this when you implement in the US, in India, in Belgium, or wherever it would be, where you could have a slight headache from all the things that you have to do, just basically bolt onto an external solution and they will take care of that. So the external guys are the experts. Why would we need to in each or I admit some Microsoft partners, they most certainly know what they're doing with that, but it takes experts and you need to be on top of things in here. Why not just stay Dynamics 365 finance operations experts and then leave it to some tax experts outside and then hook up to those ones. So what you could do is then you could hook up to an external service partner and they'll say, relax, Finn, we will take care of all the things about the sales tax, no matter if you do some triangular trade, if you are doing some cross-border between US and Mexico, or whatever you would do. We know how to do the things in here. It makes it so much more simple. And this is an area where I'm always kind of on my toes, nervous, because I'm not always 100% sure that I know each and everything that I should know about the things. And if nobody else is around right now, I have to do a couple of things where I'm not 100% confident and then ask for advice afterwards. So this, I really think is great. Tax is one of the places where if there's still people around at the tax authorities, you can really get into trouble. So I'm all in favor of this. Really, this is the best addition I've seen for a long time when we're talking about the globalization things in here. If you operate in a few countries only, by all means, you would know what it is. But when you try to get on one or two continents around the world or whatever, there's so many things to keep track of. This is good. I really think so. So find it somewhere else, just hook up, have an account, use your API keys, and then things should just work. Should, right? So I'll have to see that, but I think this is really good. Copilot, I mentioned, I'm not going to mention it. I've got it in here. And the reason is that Microsoft is really excited about this. And some of the guys I know at Microsoft, they're really excited about that. With Dynamics 365, yeah, I think it's going to be good, but there's not too much in there yet. Copilot is, well, it's all buzz. I'm sure you read about it. It's coming to the next version of Windows, I think it is, and to Microsoft 365, the new name for Office with Word and Excel, not in Europe, and maybe not in all places, but it's coming this fall to most of the world, as far as I understand. And it's all about collaboration. So instead of you having to look up things, you just ask, basically. Yeah, so what's new? Well, the new thing is that you could be working in teams. You know, Teams is Microsoft's favorite of cooperation. And then when you're in teams with your internal colleagues, they ask you, okay, how much did you do in the UK when you delivered to something in the manufacturing industry? Oh, wait a sec, I'll just look it up. And then you make your way to your Dynamics 365 or your Power BI or whatever you do. No, but Copilot from inside Teams is the claim. You could just ask and you get the information in here. That sounds good. But let's see. It really sounds promising, but there's been a few things where you said, okay, this is going to happen like this, especially with, you know, the integration, automation, Cortana, voice activation, and other things too. Let's see. And that's why I really want to have a look at that. Unfortunately, I live in Europe, right? So I'm not going to see that in my Windows or in my Office. I'm still working on that. But it's coming in Dynamics 365. And just a heads up on that. A quick heads up. time is running. So what could you do? You could get some customer account details, as mentioned. If you're in discussion with some of your colleagues in here, then you could talk about this or just write about it if you want to in Teams. So when you're working with some other internal ones, right? This is a company information. So inside Teams, you could just in Copilot, you can ask the questions about the customers, and you don't have to navigate. You don't have to spend some time on finding this. You get the answers immediately. I'm looking forward to that. I haven't tried in real life, I have to admit. Maybe some of you guys have. If you have, please share your opinion in the chat, and then tell me if I'm allowed to share that with the rest of the people in here. Right. So a lot of possibilities. Collection agents, the guys who are looking after our money and getting it as soon as possible from the customers. That's one of the places where we've got workspace, right? One of my favorite workspaces, that's the customer credit and collection for sure. This is for where the world starts of getting the money from that. So now more tools for the collection agents, and they deserve that, obviously. Busy guys are now. So AI-powered, co-pilot, machine learning, all buzzwords, and it's been put to action now. Finally, I would say. Copilot is really big, becoming really big. It's all over the place with Microsoft, and with us, I think soon. Looking forward to try it. I think that was just about it for the Copilot, and then I can see there's quite a lot of questions in here, so I'll just move on through the rest of this without mentioning too much, and then I will just see. I just need to see how much more I've got. Quite a few things on that, and then I need to just pay a quick revisit to my release wave 1. Have a look at that. What was over here? So you can see Copilot. You can read for yourself about these things in here. I'm not going to present that. That was only optional things if I had enough time, which I don't have anymore. But please have a look in the release wave and read about this and test it when this is possible. So just before handing over the word to our marketing manager, Alison, I just want to remind you about the release wave 1 and come back to that. I mentioned already some of the most important things that we had in there. And financial tax, that was it. And the discussion with myself I had is it's going to replace Dimension. And I did a blog post and I also mentioned that in the webinar that I did in February. I also mentioned a lot about this. Of course, it's not going to replace Dimensions. Dimensions is going to be here forever, kind of. Oh, no promise. But it's going to replace some of the dimensions, I'm sure. If you're careful about the things and if you pay attention to the things that Microsoft brings along, release wave 1, release wave 2, and then in release wave 1.24, I'm sure, then you would see that financial tax are going to replace financial dimensions. Taking some of the complexity out of the account structure and advanced rules and other things too, and then also make it so much more flexible, because you don't have to predefine the values. You can change them even after posting the transactions and so on. I really like that, but of course not replacing the dimensions. And then there were some of the other things in here with foreign currency revaluation, posting profiles as well. And then please note that some of the things I didn't bring to your attention this day, was just kind of on a line, but I didn't mention much, are some of the things about foreign currency revaluation when it comes to bank accounts, and then also something about settlement differences in the reporting currency things in here. So do read the release wave. Not all 16 or 1800 pages, of course, but the ones where you care about in finance operations, in finance, perhaps. Right. Okay, that was just about it. And while I'm just browsing through the questions, see if there's anything I can do about those and answer those, I'll just hand over to Alison. Alison, are you right? Well, sometimes technical things happens on that end here, so I forgot to set up Alison as a co-presenter. That was really me. Sorry of that. But Alison is going to bring in. We have an offer today for for the for our on-demand MB310 on that, and it's just going to be for you guys being here live. So it's in the chat where you can find it in just a second about an offer, a discount, which we get a lot of questions about, for our MB310 on-demand course and for the MB310 virtual machine. So while you're having a look at that in the chat, let me just have a look at some of the questions in here to see if there's anything I can do about those. So I'll just be quiet for a second. Don't go away, please. I'll pick up on those questions that I can. So just going back, and I didn't take much time to have a look at which ones I could answer. So just mention some of those ones, even if I can't answer that. Can someone, well, not me, sorry, but can someone confirm the specific release date that will contain the business performance analytics? I guess that is a bit hard. The specific date on that, I haven't seen that. It's imminent as far as I know, but I haven't seen that yet. So let me just see if I can search that while I have a look at another question. I just need to bring my cursor around. Has a tendency of disappearing, you know, when you do PowerPoint presentations. Let me just see if I can find the release wave and see if there's any notes that I can see in here about that, while I browse through some of the other questions as well. And if anybody else has some answer to that question about the specific release date that will contain the business performance analytics, please by all means step forward and let's know what you know about. I have got it, not off the top of my head, but right now browsing through the release wave, and it just says October 23. So that's the closest I can get. It's in public preview. If you've got access to that, you've seen it. It's been there for a long time. But its general availability is in October 23. So I guess that's going to be very soon about that. So a question about implementing image capture and AP automation be a technically difficult project. I don't know from the Microsoft solution or about the Xlos solution on that, and the answer is no for that. And I would think it is no for Microsoft as well. I can't see why it would be technically difficult, but I don't know. I don't have any or none with our company. We're training partners, but we work on other projects. None of my colleagues have any hands-on experience with implementation of image capture AP automation. And then a question about the workspace, and thank you very much for that, because you know that's one of my favorites, no hiding that. So the workspace, it's kind of hidden in here because it's got a different name in the release note. If you're looking in the release notes, it's check out new AP Clark workspace capabilities, and it should be general available in October. A lot of goodies coming around in October for that. So that's where the workspace for the vendor invoice center should be available. And I'm glad you asked, because that shows kind of interest on that as well. Working with reporting, most reports need customization. What would be the best approach? I think that's a little bit outside the scope of this, but it really depends on the customization. You know, some of the reports, depending on what you think about customization, you could do in Excel spreadsheets and Word, but if you need to do new calculation fields and so on, it would take a little bit more. I think that would take a developer guy to give you the best possible answer for that. Question about financial tax. That question I'll make a note of. I am not going to answer that right now because I have to think about that. What would I recommend? And I normally won't recommend without thinking a little bit, maybe a little bit too much. But right now, Let me just think about that. But thank you for your question on that. Tags can be used as filters on financial reports. Definitely, it's implemented in a lot of the reports already in here with this. Otherwise, it wouldn't really be useful if you had to do, talking about the customization of reports, by the way, it would be too useful if you had to do all sorts of customizations to get something that Microsoft is pushing that hard. So the short answer is yes, it can. So read some of the Microsoft excellent documentation, I have to say, about the financial tags. I haven't done anything about the reports in my blog post, and I don't think I mentioned it when I did the webinar in February. But Microsoft documentation has a lot of things about the tags, including reports. I can't remember if it mentions the actual reports, but definitely about reporting, it's included, and it's possible to do without any customization whatsoever. And see in here. And then I got a question about our virtual machines, our training machines, and thank you very much for that. I'm not going to do any advertising for those. I will just answer you privately about this one here. Thank you very much for your question, but short answer is no. But I'll answer you anyway in private for that. But thank you very much for your question about our training environments in here. And I do understand the question. Still, it's a no. So let's see, coming back in here, I think that was just about it. And now, sorry, Alison, I'm just going to move on from this advertising in here about our webinar kind of things, hours in the question and answers, and just about to finish, and even on time. That was not any in-depth, this was not training, this was presentation, and hopefully not too salesy on that. I'm all fan of Dynamics 365 Finance Operations, as I'm sure you know, but not hiding away the fact that some of the things could be better. Also, some of the new things coming around. But I really do think there's a lot of goodies coming around for us. Not just huge things, not really huge things in here, but a lot of good daily useful things. Improvements on the bank accounts. What's not to like? Well, more improvements, please. Things about new workspace, hey, and things about the tax, right? Linked to ISVs for the tax. So I can leave that in the future. That sounds really good. Thank you very much for joining, and hopefully keep an eye on our webinars. We'll of course have some when we have the new release wave expected in January, February, and hopefully we'll meet again then, or perhaps even sooner. Thank you very much for your time and have a great day. Bye-bye. Finn out of Copenhagen. Thank you so much.